1942. The shots of World War II ring throughout Europe. Tired and exhausted soldiers find what peace they can in a pre-packaged meal, and find the comforting flavors of a tin of spaghetti ready and waiting for them. A meal cooked by a 16-year-old who had moved to America from one of the very countries they were fighting, and who would soon collect millions of dollars from his canned spaghetti. Ettore Boiardi, the man who would become Chef Boyardee, was a born chef. Born in the northern Italy town of Piacenza on October 22, 1897, Ettore loved cooking at a young age. So young that his family says that he used a wire whisk as a baby rattle and had become a chef's apprentice at the young age of 11. Only 5 years later, Ettore would be moving a world away. By 16, Ettore struck out on his own. He left Italy and set out for New York City, where his brother Paul lived and worked as a waiter at the famous Plaza Hotel. There, Paul managed to get Ettore a job in the kitchen, and the staff quickly learned what Ettore's family knew since he was a baby. Ettore was a cooking prodigy. A year later, Ettore was made head chef. But Ettore wasn't done. What would have been the culmination of a life's work for most was only a stepping stone in Ettore's career. Over the next decade, Ettore built a name for himself in the food industry. He began working as the head chef at many hotels before supervising at a presidential wedding. Ettore ended up settling in Cleveland as a head chef, but not for long. He knew it was time. Time to move on to his own ventures. Ettore opened his first restaurant with his new wife. He named it Giardino d'Italia, the Garden of Italy. And while now we see Italian foods as luxurious, at the time it had nowhere close to the prestige it now carries. Instead, all the fine food restaurants were French. But Ettore was such a skilled chef that not only was his restaurant an instant success, his customers begged him to teach them how to cook Italian meals. And then, Ettore had an idea. What if we started jarring our sauce and selling it? Would it sell? Ettore asked his family. Immediately, Ettore began collecting milk bottles and filling them with his pasta sauces, which he sold to his customers. Before long, he began offering takeout orders of cheese, uncooked pasta, and his famous sauce. Before long, his sauce became so famous that sales surpassed his restaurant business. Ettore was drowning in his own success. He could no longer handle all the orders himself. He needed to expand. Little did he realize that once he did, his company would be called to serve in the largest conflict of the century. Thanks to this video sponsor, Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that lets you test out colognes and perfumes from over 600 brands in one click. Go through a simple questionnaire on Scentbird's website to find new fragrances that fit your personal style, and get to try out luxury scents that speak to you. This month, we received Eros by Versace, a classic fragrance that embodies a strong, passionate man with hints of mint, lemon zest, and green apple. We got Burberry Bit, an intriguing combination that blends florals and citrus notes with bright cedar and nutmeg, perfect for a sophisticated aura. Lastly, we received Mercedes-Benz Select, a refined, luxurious scent with a bergamot aroma that gives a fresh, self-assured energy. With Scentbird, you get a 30-day supply for only $17 to test out fragrances. It's amazing to get to try something new without committing to a full-size bottle that could cost hundreds of dollars. With our Scentbird discount, you can try out designer fragrances for just a little over $7. Use our promo code HOOK55 to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird. Ettore had a problem. Customers were clamoring for his sauce. The demand outweighed how fast he could bottle it. He needed to increase production, and fast, so he did. Ettore set up a small canning and processing plant in Cleveland. He brought his brothers Paul and Mario in, and together they launched the Chef Boyardee Food Company. This new business brought 3 different spaghetti sauces to market: traditional, mushroom, and spicy Naples style. Business was booming, but Ettore had an embarrassing problem. American customers and salesmen couldn't pronounce Boiardi. So Ettore changed the spelling to one that customers could sound out, Boyardee. Everyone is proud of his own family name, but sacrifices are necessary for progress, Ettore later explained. It would be another 8 years before the product that made Chef Boyardee famous hit the market. Pre-packaged meals. Their first was simple: a jar of spaghetti sauce, a container of grated Parmesan cheese, and a box of spaghetti. A full spaghetti dinner ready to make at home. The company began selling its canned sauces in A&P grocery stores, opening the brand to a national market, and just at the perfect time. An easy-to-use can opener had just hit the market, and Americans now saw canned products as trusted, nutritious, and labor-saving. Every day, larger quantities of canned sauces and pre-packaged meals flowed out of the Chef Boyardee factory. There was no arguing that Chef Boyardee was successful. Too successful. Within 2 years, the company had grown so large that its plant just couldn't keep up. So Ettore packed up and moved operations from the plant in Cleveland to a factory in Milton, Pennsylvania. This new location had another advantage in addition to its larger size. It was closer to their tomato supply. In fact, the family needed so many tomatoes that they had to convince local farmers to change crops to get enough. Chef Boyardee had become a commodity in the market, and soon, the United States would need that commodity when America went to war. With a war raging, the United States military needed foods with a long shelf life that could be transported to the front lines in Europe and the Pacific, something Chef Boyardee was already skilled at. The United States commissioned the company to churn out can after can of rations for the soldiers. To keep up with increased demand, the factory kept its lights on and its production lines running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and their efforts did not go unnoticed. A year after the war was won, Ettore Boiardi was awarded the Gold Star, one of the highest awards a civilian can receive, and his workers gathered in Milton to celebrate the Allied victory. It was a great honor, and it would be the last one he received as the head of his own company. While his company was being praised for their service in the war, he was also dealing with a looming threat to his employees. Simply put, without the demand created by the war, he couldn't afford to keep on all of the employees he hired to increase production. There was only one choice to be made: sell the company. It was a difficult decision, but Ettore knew that only a larger company could keep his staff employed. He decided to sell Chef Boyardee to American Home for $6 million. After the sale, Ettore continued to work with the company as both a consultant and spokesperson. And then, tragedy struck. At the age of 87, Ettore passed away from an illness. By this time, he was widely recognized as one of the top culinary talents in all of America. In the following years, Chef Boyardee launched more products that were canned and microwavable, including ravioli, beefaroni, and lasagna. Despite the expansion, American Home eventually decided to sell its food businesses and focus on healthcare and pharmaceuticals instead. As the years went on, Chef Boyardee's sales remained steady, even as Americans continued to prefer fresh food over canned. But when the COVID-19 pandemic began, sales surged as people were stuck at home and Americans searched for cheap, easy-to-make, comforting meals. Today, Chef Boyardee is owned by Conagra Brands and has contributed to that conglomerate's recent 35% increase in growth. And Americans still seek out Chef Boyardee products like beefaroni, ravioli, and spaghetti and meatballs as a go-to comfort food. This is the story of how a 16-year-old left Italy for the US and worked his way up from being a waiter to one of the top culinary talents, building a famous food brand along the way. For more stories of the world's biggest brands, subscribe to Hook and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode. Remember, use our code HOOK55 to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird and try out amazing new fragrances today.